Hi, my name is Macy Webb, and today I'm going to be talking about the life of Alvin Plantinga and his contributions to the philosophy of religion.
Alvin Plantinga was one of the most influential philosophers of religion. He was born in Ann Arbor, Michigan, where he was raised in the Christian Reformed Church.
Plantinga's father was a psychology and a philosophy professor, so consequently, Plantinga was exposed to philosophy at an early age.
This drove Plantinga to pursue philosophy, where he then studied at Harvard, Calvin College, University of Michigan, and then earned his PhD from Yale in 1957.
After earning his PhD, Plantinga began teaching. He taught at Calvin College for 19 years and then retired from Notre Dame University as a professor. The life of Plantinga and the generation before him was dominated by atheists and agnostics due to the influence of positivism.
Positivism rejects metaphysics and theism by holding that if you have a rationally justifiable assertion, it should be scientifically verified and it is capable of logical or mathematical proof.
Plantinga states that when he left grad school in 1957, there were few Christian philosophers, and fewer Christian philosophers willing to identify themselves as such.
In a 1980 New York Times article, Plantinga was called the leading Orthodox Protestant philosopher of God. Plantinga's religious philosophy focused on many different aspects. He had a conclusion as to why God exists. He focused on the problem of evil in religion, and he addressed evolution and naturalism. In 1969, Plantinga wrote a book entitled God and Other Minds, which is a study of the rational justification of the belief in God.
In his book, he discusses the rational belief in the existence of God or other minds. Christianity, as well as other religions, believe in God or other minds. And because of this widespread belief over thousands of years, despite there being no successful argument for the existence of God or other minds, he argues that there is no need for a successful argument for us to rationally believe in God. Plantinga uses an epistemological argument for this.
Epistemology is the study and theory of knowledge, in which it focuses on the mind's relation to reality. It uses reason, logic, and experience to distinguish justifiable beliefs from opinions.
Plantinga's epistemological argument is that belief in God is rational without requiring arguments or evidence. He claims it is difficult to prove that belief in God is rational and believes it is possible to suggest ways in which belief in God meets the requirement of rationality.
Plantinga's modal ontological argument could be one of the best arguments for the existence of God. Here he uses modal logic, which is similar to a mathematical proof. Plantinga has 5 points to prove the existence of God. The first one being that it is possible that God exists. Here we have to define what God means. There are 3 ways that entities can be defined. 1 is impossible. This is where an entity exists in no possible worlds, such as the number 2 being equal to 3. Next, we have contingent. This is when an entity exists in some possible worlds, such as a dragon. Lastly, we have a necessary entity, in which it has to exist in all possible worlds. This can be seen by numbers, truths, and shape definitions. God has to be a necessary entity if he exists, because he is defined as a maximally great being. A maximally great being is a being that possesses all qualities that are better to have, such as a necessity, which is defined as a great-making property. And because necessity is a better quality to have, God, as a maximally great being, would possess it. A maximally great being would not be contingent, because that would be less than great. That's if he existed in all worlds. So if it is possible that God exists, then God exists in some possible worlds. Now, a possible world is a hypothetical situation, in which philosophers use this to test an idea to see if it is logical by asking if it could exist in a possible world like our own. Because we have established God as a maximally great being, we know that he would not be contingent, because he would possess necessity as a great quality. So God would exist in all possible worlds, and thus he would exist in the actual world, and if he exists in the actual world, then he exists.
Although this modal ontological argument is most likely not convincing to you, it is logically coherent. There are often objections to premise 1 of the modal ontological argument, saying that it is impossible for maximally great beings to exist. There are many arguments for this, but they are all logically incoherent.
A second thing that Plantinga discussed was evil in religion. A common argument against the existence of God is the presence of evil in the world. Oftentimes, people use this argument saying that if God were real, then there should be no evil in the world, and no bad things should happen to us.
Plantinga refutes these defenses against the rationality of the belief in God by using free will. God grants us free will, which means we have the power to do what we want. Plantinga states that God cannot create free creatures who always choose to do good.
This would mean that we are able to choose to do evil, but we would have to bear the consequences. God could not stop evil in the world without eliminating our free will.
This view of Plantinga's is widely accepted, and is even accepted among the proponents of the original atheistic argument. Near the end of his career, Plantinga began to focus on the relationship between religion and evolution. Plantinga uses evolution to prove the irrationality of naturalist beliefs.
A naturalist believes that nothing exists beyond the natural world. They believe that everything comes from nature. Naturalists do not believe in the supernatural world, or anything like God existing. Naturalists believe in evolution, or descent with modification, which was proposed by Charles Darwin in the 1850s. With this thinking, they believe that everything evolves. Plantinga states that you cannot be a naturalist and believe in evolution at the same time. He argues this by stating that if a naturalist believes that everything evolves, then they also think that cognitive faculties, such as memory, evolves with time. Plantinga says that to be a naturalist, that means you are also a materialist. A materialist believes that human beings are material objects and do not possess souls. So as a materialist and a naturalist, one believes that behavior and beliefs are caused by neurology. And since they all believe in natural selection, then that would mean that behavior is adaptive, and thus neurology is adaptive. And if neurology is adaptive, then beliefs do not make any difference. And in this case, beliefs do not have to be true for neurology to be adaptive. So neurology can cause false beliefs, and these false beliefs could cause the right behavior. So the probability that a cognitive faculty produces a true belief is fairly low.
This should mean that all naturalists should be skeptical of their beliefs because of their belief in evolution and thus the evolutionary aspects of neurology, and that their behavior and beliefs come from neurology. Their beliefs may not often be true. Plantinga does not believe that this is a rejection of naturalism and evolution. He just labels these beliefs as irrational.
Plantinga received the Templeton Prize in 2017 for his progress in religious philosophy. The Templeton Prize is awarded annually to a person whose works and achievements advance Sir John Templeton's philanthropic vision.
This is done by using science to explore the deepest questions of the universe and our purposes in it. Plantinga's 50 years of philosophical contributions have returned the exploration of religious beliefs to the philosophical table. During his 50-year career, Plantinga won 10 prizes that represent the major impact that he had on the field of religious philosophy. Researching Alvin Plantinga, I learned much about his life, but I also learned a lot that I can apply to my life. The fact that Plantinga began pursuing religious philosophy when there were not many prominent religious philosophers around taught me that nothing should stop me from pursuing what I believe, even if people around me believe the opposite. And in his case, it was the atheists and the agnostics. And from this, if I am passionate enough about what I want to do, I can make a difference. The fact that some of the original atheistic proponents began to accept some of Plantinga's works is really inspiring. The fact that Plantinga's work is recent and current allows me to see that an individual can still make a change. Learning about Plantinga's life was different than learning about past philosophers like Plato and Kant. Plantinga's work began in the same world that you and I are currently living in. Knowing this gives me hope that something I might be able to do could have an impact like that of Plantinga's. Another thing that I've learned from Plantinga's philosophy is that my beliefs, whether or not factual or proved by evidence, are rational. Plantinga states that faith is not to be contrasted with knowledge. Faith, at least in a paradigmatic instance, is knowledge of a special kind. He also states that in religious beliefs, as elsewhere, we must take our chances, recognizing that we could be wrong, dreadfully wrong. There are no guarantees, The religious life is a venture. Foolish and debilitating error is a permanent possibility. If we can be wrong, however, we can also be right. Plantinga quotes Hebrews 11:1, which states, "Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen." He also quotes Thomas Aquinas, stating, "The believer has sufficient motive for believing, for he is moved by the authority of divine teaching, confirmed by miracles, and what is more, by the inward instigation of the divine invitation." For me, as a believer, it's about what I hold to be true, and the evidence in the testimonies that I have witnessed. So, thanks for watching. I hope you learned something. Bye!